we're live.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, no, he said we'll get to office by
Oh, well, yes. No, he sent me. Right. So I'm Harean, and I'm the second part of the aquaponics presentation. That's me with dengue. That's how I got into aquaponics. That's a picture from today, and that's well, we don't. It's a dead fish. We don't talk about it. Akash is still grieving, still a denial. Then there will be anger, and then we. You know, so
you're not fit to be a father, okay?
One of the eggs, right? So why are we doing this? This is the main thing, and there's a number of reasons that we're looking at doing this. There's a whole bunch of potential possibilities where aquaponics can really have relevance to Sri Lanka. So whether we're talking about micronutrients and things like iron deficiency and sorting that out, looking at protein, you can see that. When it comes to Sri Lanka, we have a lot of things that we need to address there. They potentially looked at possibly a link between Hettiarachchi syndrome, which is like chronic kidney disease, and that and potential nitrates from just overuse of urea and NPK fertilizers, and of course there's a hell of a lot of pesticide overuse. And of course water. Access to water is something that's not. So it's not something that's available all over the country, whether you're in Jaffna, if you're in certain places. Water is something that you don't have all the time in the quantities that you want. And some of these pictures are from Jaffna from a trip last week. The way they work, this is a group of women farmers, so they have to walk to their farm. They have also a small, organic home gardening, and that garden's pretty big. When I say it's big, if it was filled with aquaponics, that would be a huge farm. But for them, they can only produce so much. It's organic. They have to walk to their proper farm. They've got to walk 45 minutes. They can't go at night. Sometimes they can't go alone. There's all sorts of things like that. So access to that's a problem. Water is something where they have the well. There are wells all over the farms. They pump all the water out of the well once every 3 days. They just empty it out, and then they wait for it to fill up again. So that's something that they're dealing with. The two main costs are labor and fertilizer. Those are the two largest costs. And of course, labor is something that they're going to have to obviously still work around with. And there are ways that things like having more dense farms can help you to be able to do that. But at the same time, from a fertilizer perspective, we can help them, and that's something that we can look at. Why? What are the things? So we talked about when it comes to aquaponics. The numbers vary, depends on, once again, how you run your systems. There are different systems where you trade off yield and you trade off certain factors, but you can use significantly less water. There's much higher yields. You can control exactly the nutrients, just like Akash said. You can control the nutrients that are going to hit the plant that you want. You can do that. You can keep testing your water. You can make sure you really control it. If in the last few weeks you need to increase the amount of a particular, say, trace element like iron in the last few weeks, or if there's something, you can do that. You can suspend feeding if you feel that there's too much nitrates in the system. It's great for managing space. You don't have any soil-based pathogens, so a lot of things that would normally hit the plants that they will get from the soil, they don't get. Of course, there are other problems, things like pests, which will never be, which you still have to address. It's 100% organic. There's no fertilizer, no pesticides, and to qualify that, the only thing that I use in my system are trace elements. I just add iron, magnesium, boron, a little bit of because as far as I know, those are not things that occur in some kind of organic. I've never heard of an organic compound, but if there was, we'd use that. But still, absolutely no fertilizer, no pesticides, and this could be, once again, there's accessible fish protein for people. There's some things that we're still dealing with, why it may not be the solution for a lot of Sri Lankan farmers. There's still a high setup cost. We'll talk about cost today. Access to electricity is still needed. There's a caveat there. There's some potential possibilities where you can use, for example, the up tractor water pump, and you can use a gravity tank. You can fill that and then go to a sump. So there are some additional costs, but there are possibilities to run it without constant electricity. You just have to figure out the system. We haven't tested that out yet, but there's a possibility. Manual pest control is rough because you can't spray anything on. The fish would die. There's all sorts of things. But at the same time, it keeps you on your toes. The problem with Sri Lanka is different, depending on the community. And if depending on what the farmers are used to, they may not like to take that extra effort. Tilani's had trouble when, you know, there's cases where farmers, despite the higher yields from organic produce, choose not to because it just means there's more work for them. So that trade-off of more money for more work doesn't seem like necessarily something that people want to do. The knowledge of now, you need more knowledge. You need to understand how to farm fish, how to take care of them and not let them die, for example. That's a terrible thing. That doesn't happen.
Careless.
Yes. You have to understand how to grow plants. I have grown 2 plants up to now. Both have died. One was Freddie. Freddie was a little bonsai, and at that time I was smoking 2 packs a day. And I think Freddie more or less inhaled passive smoke, 2 packs a day. And I think Freddie died of lung cancer. And I think that was the first, so that was really bad. And I had a basil plant called Mr. Forty. And Mr. Forty also just died. And so I cannot grow plants for love or money. But it seems to be working. You also need to understand, of course, basic plumbing and a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of O-level chemistry and biology is needed. So this is not something to throw at somebody who has no education. You need people to be a bit literate, be able to understand how numbers work, and be able to understand how relations between different chemical aspects. There's a skill transfer period that's required. It's not something that, for example, tomorrow you can just start a system, I can build one, give it to someone here, and you can then just go ahead and start running it. There's a period in which that skill transfer is going to be required. Even if you had a little bit of knowledge, it's going to be a way that can help people. And of course, you need kind of regular water testing. There's a few things that you have to either factor into the cost, or it's maybe that a group of people that you could help a group of farmers. One person had that and then they did all the testing for an area or something like that. There's ways that you can deal with that. And of course a catastrophic system crash, which we will not talk about again. Research is your first thing. You're building your system. The beauty of the kind of hippies who do aquaponics is that they're fully open source. Every bit of information is available for free out there. There are YouTube videos of people who go through it. There's channels dedicated. Bright Agritech's one of my favorite. There's a gazillion forums. You can just go and join. Every question that can and has been asked about aquaponics has been answered on some forum. You can just find it. You go. You work your way. You search through it. Setting it up and understanding will take some time. Something that you can do if you wish to, but it's worth it and it's fun. I mean, it's something that you can do. Components, the main parts. Now, Akash talked about the nitrate cycle and how all of that worked. So let's talk about the main components of an aquaponic system. You start with a fish tank, and your fish tanks can be something like fiberglass. Mine's fiberglass. Akash is what you call an IBC, an intermediate bulk container. So it's just basically something you should have latex or some other kind of chemical or something like that, and you can cut those. Those are the costs vary depending on what you're using. And that's something that's important. You need to make sure that your fish don't have, for example, have any direct sunlight go there. There's algae kind of issues. It needs to be sturdy. You've got to understand these are heavy things. When you put 1,000 liters of water in something, you can't have it supported on something else. It will break it. You need to make sure that you have that sorted out. Then you have your plant bed, and your plants, where you circulate your water from the fish to the plants. There are different ways you can do that. There are different types of media. Ours is the system that Akash and I are both using what you call a floating raft system, where you're floating a floating styrofoam raft with holes in it and pots sunk in it, and you get these beautiful. When you lift up the raft, you see all these beautiful roots just hanging in there. And I'm sorry, I don't have a photo of that. You need to think about, and that's something I should have done. Yes, now I feel like an idiot.
No, I have one, but
you're going to say okay. The biofilter is something that's important. Now, the biofiltration is exactly where the nitrate, the nitrosomonas and the nitrobacter, where they actually go ahead and break your ammonia down. So it's something that, being a biofilter, since you want a lot of bacterial activity there, first of all, this is aerobic bacteria that you want to be working. There's different types of bacteria. There's anaerobic bacteria, which is dangerous potentially to the fish, and something you don't want having a lot of it. You want aerobic bacteria, which means you need to have a lot of oxygen. Either you need to aerate your system, you need to make sure that there's no places where you have like suddenly drops in oxygen in your system, and you need to have high surface area so that your bacteria can colonize. Usually they'll colonize the surfaces of the tank and they'll get on the inside of the pipes, but it helps to just go in and put some things, that just, you know, people use you know, the bags, those the gunny bags that they use that you have that are made of that kind of fake straw, that kind of plastic straw thing that you use for compost or for fertilizer, for rice. That stuff, people will shred that up and they'll put that into a box, into a container, and aerate that, and that will be where all your bacteria, because there's a huge surface area. That's where all of that would happen. So aeration, that's something that's important. Mineralizations are also part of that. It's the process of which you start getting, you know, the nitrates into the system. Circulation and plumbing, and that's Diane. He can't be with us today because he's got some other work, or he'll be on Skype with us. Circulation, this was us just celebrating, Navin and Diane and I celebrating, you know, getting the system running and just hearing those happy gurgles of everything running. And that's you know, there's a little bit of, you need to understand how that works. And of course, solids removal, the idea of, you know, when you have fish poop, you don't want too much of it in your system. You want that to be removed, and you want to be able to get rid of it after a certain time. You don't want your water and your roots to get clogged. So these are the main components of any aquaponics system that we're running. And when you're running it, now that was installation, so when you're running it, you've got your fish. And we use tilapia. There's different types of tilapia. There's at least 3 species that I mean, I run mostly river mongrels. They call them bhattas in Sri Lanka. But you have the gift, you have the red, and you have the Nile River tilapias, which are tilapia species which are available. The National Agriculture Development Agency has its nurseries in Udabara. Yes, thank you. And you can get the feed, you know, the proper gene stock. You can make sure they're all male if you want to, if that's your thing. And you know, and it helps because that makes sure that first of all they don't spend time. No, Lasita.
Obviously, my fish tank would be all female.
So feeding your fish is something that that's important, and usually one of the biggest costs, right? Commercial feed is not cheap. I use something which is, you know, I get ground up, I get the local dry fish person to give, you know, hard massa heads, the sprat heads, and ground them. I grind them up, and I add the sweepings of rice and kurakan flour from a local, like a rice grinding place, and mix that, and I make their feed. So it's really cheap. I get prawn casings and prawn heads, which are just high in energy, high in fat, high in protein, and the fish love it. And high in calcium, there we go. You learn something every day. No, but so it's exactly what so there's ways to bring the cost down, and I'm specifically saying off commercial feed in my bill because I just want to make sure that it's something that a farmer can access, and it's not something that's really expensive. Water quality is something that so far that, you know, once a week I test it. Every time that I have a pH meter, and I test it every, you know, like twice or 3 times a day when I'm dead, but I'm only dead once a week now. Earlier, of course, I was traveling every day, going back home, doing this, but now once a week, I'm just there for the weekends. I test the water, make sure that's there. If there's too much nitrates in the system, it means there's too much ammonia in the system. It means you reduce the feed for the fish. So there's things like that. The moment you see a dead fish, it means there's a problem. And that fish would have been dead there. The protein, that you know, the sliminess, which is protein, that sheet would have just basically broken down into ammonia. You need to do a lot of things. You need to keep worrying about water quality, and the main things are pH. Fish respond badly to pH if that goes out of kilter. Fish and sudden changes of it, you need to be careful. Dissolved oxygen is very important. That's how they breathe. Fish lives matter.
They don't have souls.
Maybe ask a question? You said that you watch out for dead fish. How many fish have died in your system?
It's interesting you should ask. So I have lost no tilapia yet.
Okay.
Right? Yes.
Is that more of a
there were 2 mollies that they both they perished. I think some of the tilapias bullied them and they died. But you know, and doing quite well, I think.
Fish tank.
Okay.
I would consider that to be a reason. I think anyone, you know, in this business. Sorry. Okay. There's a saying amongst you know, on the forums that they say that you're not a proper aquaponics practitioner until you've killed 1,000 fish. So
where are you up to, Akish? Someone call Fish Protective Services!
So you fish, so water quality is important. So pH, dissolved oxygen, and of course ammonia levels. So you check for ammonia, you check for nitrates and nitrates. And it's important. And there's a lot more detail in there that I can go into, but those are the main things that we're going to take care of. Pest control is just manual so far. I just go in, the moment I see something, I tear it out and I throw it away. That's all I can do right now. I'm looking at potentially either finding a way to spray something like either Coca-Cola, but I will test it out with the fish to see if the fish respond badly. I have to be careful because things like Coca-Cola are natural antiseptics. I have bacteria doing important jobs in my system. I don't want them to die. So an antiseptic, even if it's a naturally occurring antiseptic, can easily upset your bacterial system. And the bacteria, basically the foreign exchange system in your aquaponics. They take the ammonia and they convert it into something that the plants can actually use. So they're an important exchange system within that. Solids removal, this is how I feel every 2 weeks when I'm siphoning through a plant muck. It's not too bad actually, I am exaggerating, but there is a bit of siphoning, about 2 or 3 hours worth of work, and you throw that out. The amount of water I'd say I cycle during an average week is about 5%, because you remove some of the gunk from the bottom and things like that, and you lose a bit of evaporation. So about 5% of the water, and that's phenomenal for what you're getting, because every 2 weeks you get a huge harvest, and these things work. The plant life cycle, you've got to be growing you've got to be seeding. You've got to seed them in trays. You've got to make sure that you take care of them. Some of them don't like sunlight at the start. Some of them do. And once they're done, you need to make sure that at the same time you're giving them some nutrients. When they're at the right stage, you go ahead and you transfer them here into the rocks. Now there are different things. Although we've been talking about rocks, there are things like towers. There are great tower systems that run through that. There's a system which is called a media bed, where you have things like either something like clay balls, or you can use stone or something like that. People use that, and all you do is and that's where your plants are growing, and you have a system which just fills up and down, the water goes up and down, and those systems basically work. Component check, that's just something you're going to have to do for a week. And I'm sorry, just to go back, I'll go back in a second. So on a weekly basis, you spend about 200 to 400 rupees, in terms of all fish feeding my fish. It's not a lot, but just a little bit. I don't have a lot of fish. I have about 24 fish in my tank at the moment, and now a bunch of babies as well. And it's about 4 to 10 hours worth of work. It's about 4 to 10 hours of work, and that's it varies. So at the start there's more. You're doing a lot more work and things like that. As it goes on, it's fine. Just want to talk a bit about some of the costs. So although initially the cost for us to set this up was about 65,000, that's with a lot of testing, a lot of Diane and I looked at a lot of different things. We went ahead and bought fiberglass tanks from the guy who sells them, and it's expensive. Now we found these, and these are about 6,000 rupees each for these IBCs. So we can bring it down right now. We know we can bring it down to about 27,000 rupees. So let's say certainly in that kind of range. For hardware, so we're not talking about fish, acquiring the fish, or we're not talking about food. That stuff is more or less that your running cost. So it's not a lot, and for which you get quite a lot. So your installation cost is still high, but these are the main things. So that's just what I just wanted to talk about in terms of my system. So I think Akash will probably take you through a bit of the pictures about your system. You can do that later, or when we So I'm done. So we can actually move into
can we move to questions, or
yeah, we can take Q&A while he's rolling through.
So very quickly, also, what's your both of your capacity? I mean, in liters or gallons?
Okay, so exactly. So before he does and starts showing it, mine's a 1,000-liter tank, fish tank. And I have 2 grow beds, each 4 foot by 4 foot, so that's where those rafts are with those plants, and that's what you see up over here. That's this picture right here. There's 2 of those big things, and each of them has about 300 liters of water in it, and then the rest of it's floating. And that's what, so about 1,600 liters total running through itself. And
now, because you mentioned cost as well, so that will cost roughly, now that you fine-tuned it, to about 26,000 rupees,
yeah,
$400 like a week running cost.
Yeah.
And about 6 to 7 hours a week on labor.
Could be more at the start.
Okay. What's the projected yield? I mean, will it feed 1 person or 2 people, a family of 4? Or?
And on that note, can you do a complete nutritional solution? Can you go off the grid just by growing your own food?
Yeah. So the first answer in terms of yield, in terms of the overall yield. So far, I haven't even filled 25% of my plant slots in my system. So. And what I brought today, the kankung and things like that, and as you can see, it's growing very, very happily. This is the size of the leaves. They're huge, and this is just, all of them come out that big. Sweet basil's growing really happily. We're seeing generally we're seeing the plants are really, really happy. Every 2 weeks I get a harvest out of it, easily every 2 weeks. And all the kankung I brought was just from 6 plants.
And that was like, what was the volume of that?
You saw that bucket. It was a gigantic bucket.
Yeah.
And sorry, and so up to date, it's been what, 3 months?
To this day, I've had the system running for about 3 months. I've had fish in the system. I had like only 7 fish at the start, so that there was barely any nutrients in the system, but only added. So it's been really kind of cycled up in the last month is only when things got really interesting.
How much?
And just to answer that last question, Navin's question, to go off the grid is possible. So the question is, can you grow anything that you want with aquaponics? You almost can. As you can see, we're doing leafy vegetables, leafy greens. I'm doing leafy greens. Akash is looking at things like tomatoes and bell peppers and things like that.
Should I?
Yeah, so I'll let you do that. But you can also do root vegetables, but you need a slightly different system.
Did your setup costs also include things like the pH meters and this and pieces of electronic
Good
stuff?
question. I didn't include those in there. That's a great question.
So cost of pH meters, like a pH meter can go from like $5 to like $20 depending on where you buy it from and how good they are.
Yeah.
Nitrate tests cost like about $3,000, but you might be able to get it cheaper from eBay. Ammonia test would be roughly the same. Dissolved oxygen, I believe, is way more expensive, but not so necessary.
What's dissolved oxygen?
Basically, the oxygen in the dissolved water.
What is that? Is that like?
So it's the oxygen that the plants.
No, but I mean, what is that?
It's a meter. It's an electronic.
Okay. So it's not like ice cubes that you throw in there or something like that.
No. In the sense, it's an actual meter.
It doesn't increase. So I'll just run through my system real quick.
Sorry, Dimitri had a question. Sorry, you wanted to ask that now? Oh, you want to wait?
So this is I'm doing a much smaller scale system at Harean. Actually, my fish tank, my LBC, I'm using IBC, which is 1,000 liters, but cut down it's more like 700 or 800 liters if you look at what the level actually is. Which is larger than Harean's, but he has more fish in it. I'm planning on more plants. I'm planning on expanding mine. Right now it's only one grow bed, which is chlorine raft system similar to Harean's. So basically what it is I've gotten a, you want me to discuss?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So basically I've got a pot here, I put like netted pots and I filled it with gravel. Let me see if I can get a good picture of the gravel. So you can see over here, I got like river gravel. And I filled it to a certain level just to give the plant some support when you initially put it, and then I repotted it inside and I covered it with the gravel. And after a while it will grow through it. So you fill it with gravel, then you cut out holes for the pots to fit in, with vegiform to float. Then you make it fit the size of the tank, and you just put it on, and then you just put the thing through. What happens is eventually the water will come up to this level, and eventually like the plants will grow roots. And so you get that. This is the entire system. I've added this barrel over here, which is called a sump tank. A sump tank is basically the intermediate between where the plants grow and where the fish are alive. The sump tank, I did it simply because I needed someplace lower to put a pump in. But people use it for various reasons. One is it's a good way to like buffer the water. It's a good container to promote bacteria growth. It's a good place to filter out any solids as well. So what I do is I got the fish tank, which is 1,000 liters. It pumps into the grow bed, and then it drains off into the sump tank all through gravity. And then in the sump tank I've got like a small 10 watt.
Yeah, I think you're like 12.
Roughly like 12 watt. Water pump, submersible pump, and that pump pushes it back to the IBC, and then simply by the water level raising, it will reach the lip of the pipes and it will flow back through. I'm experimenting with tomatoes and bell peppers, and I'm using kankung. Kankung is growing fantastically well, like incredibly fast. In about a month, I'm going to have like a proper harvest, similar to what he's got. Tomatoes are a bit sluggish, but they're getting there, and the bell peppers as well. I think they focus more on growing their roots at the moment because they haven't really grown much in height, but their root systems have gotten quite intricate. This is after probably like half a week. I wasn't able to take a more recent one because we completely forgot. But you can see this is what you want to look for, like nice white roots. That means that there's no disease, there's nothing, no mark or anything. If you took a more recent picture, my one says like a bit of algae on it, but underneath that it's nice and white, so it's getting oxygen, it's getting the right bacteria around it. So Yeah. Moving on, yeah, these are the fish. I just put mollies in the plant bed because they eat fish. Yeah, because other things you don't want to promote maybe.
Are these systems undercover or can they put out in direct sunlight?
Yeah, that's actually a problem I had. So you've got the IBC, it's all in my garden, so it comes under direct sunlight.
Yeah.
The IBC, I initially put a clear plastic sheet on it, and that was enough. I got quite bad algae growth. Then I took a black sheet and I put it down, and almost immediately the amount of algae dropped and the visibility got better. You don't want algae because they steal oxygen, which is what caused my fish, so I'll get to that as well.
How many do you lose?
So you had like an algae bloom basically.
Yeah, okay, so what happened with my fish was...
You were careless!
No, so last night it rained, like, it rained a lot, and my garden kind of flooded a bit. So the water flowed into where I have the multi-plug with all my pumps in it, including the oxygen pump, and it blew. And what happened? No, it didn't really electrocute the fish. What happened was the oxygen pump stopped working, and with the combination of the algae taking up the oxygen, and with like it being a large tank and being a very hot morning, the fish just ran out of oxygen and they all died. I lost about 16 fish. So basically all my tilapia, and I emptied it out. We tested for ammonia, which is what you have to do. So this is crisis. This is what happened in the crisis. My fish died, which is like the worst possible thing, especially if all of them die. What you have to do is figure out what caused the problems, which balance got messed up. So I tested pH, made sure the pH is within the acceptable range. If you do your research and you figure out which fish and which plants you want to use, you'll figure out which pH is generally between 6.5 and 7.4. I checked the pH first. pH was fine. What are the other potential problems? It can be oxygen or it can be ammonia. He came over and we tested for ammonia. Ammonia was fine. So then we concluded that it was because of the oxygen. And that's basically, those are the kind of problems you'll have. It's quite stressful, but...
So when you had
just to add on to what you're saying, so the way algae works is just like all plants, right? So they're just microplants. So what happens during the day, they do photosynthesis. So they actually produce enough oxygen. Night is when the pollution comes in. So they've raised up to the level that you suddenly have a huge algae population in your water. Night comes in. The rain knocked out the aeration
around 2 o'clock in the morning or something.
And then suddenly your algae, which is really high, which at night so it doesn't do photosynthesis. Instead it absorbs oxygen and releases carbon dioxide, just killed all this.
Well, so in the space of 6-7 hours, it just killed everything.
Because of the rain, my multiple got burnt out.
So the thing is, algae is a significant problem. You have to. So the answer to LJ's question is, you know, I mean, you have to keep it as close to darkness as possible. Especially, first of all, no direct sunlight at all. Like even some of the
oh man, that's not.
Oh,
but there doesn't seem to be.
Nice. Show that.
But there doesn't seem to be any direct sunlight.
Show the movie.
The more recent.
There is direct sunlight.
Sorry, what? Now you say something?
Sorry, it is. Sorry, it's all covered, right? So there is no direct sunlight. So how do you see the problem?
This is the plastic bag I used earlier, and the water went here because this is translucent.
Oh, your tilapia tank is not enclosed.
Yeah, but I mean, some like algae can't be avoided completely. You have different types of algae. You have the free-floating ones, which are the really bad ones, and you have the ones that stick on to the side of the wall.
Yeah.
So what happens with something clear like this, or even glass fish tanks, as someone who's at an aquarium before can attest to, when there's sunlight, generally they will, if there's not too much like this, they will form on the walls of it, and essentially block out sunlight for any other potential algae blooms inside the actual water, which is actually fine. That's okay as long as you have enough oxygen.
So you don't need to spray paint your tank black.
It would help.
It would help. I might do that, but right now, if I cover it, I want to see. I refill the water. I want to.
So you recently had a.
Sorry, just before that to answer Navin's question, and this is something we were talking about. The problems are also places like here, and these are not, and the edges are not properly sealed. And these you can actually see the water right through it. So you would normally cover. So in my system, we use different media. I use the coconut husk, the chopped up cocoa husk, and that stuff. That usually makes sure that it's just covered as much as possible. Argus is right. You can't stop algae from growing. You just have to be careful. You have a dangerous amount of it.
But in retrospect, I have to add more stones on this to get it above the layer of the water. Yeah. That was just simply because I ran out of river stones.
Couldn't you use a PVC tank instead, like the ones
PVC tank?
the big
Yeah, any water container,
already
as long
black.
as it's not reactive.
Yeah.
PVC is perfect because they use it for our piping as well.
Yeah.
This fiberglass one,